All our knowledge comes from nature, and yet nature is the source of many mysteries. Let us travel to explore the amazing ways in which nature affects our body, mind, and spirit. Let us dig up some ancient wisdom and examine new findings on the role of nature from birth to death of a human life. We hope to leave you with some important clues to help you solve one of the greatest mysteries of your life: how to create a healthier, happier life for yourself and your loved ones.
Forests are endangered, are highly endangered spaces. Living in this beautiful forest, I feel the urgent need to reach out and find ways to protect these precious spaces that we have left. What I'm trying to do is to build a forest school for the local community children here, to make the children aware of the beauty of this forest. In India, we have wealth of material of ancient texts, the Upanishads, that describe the benefits of learning in forest areas. Nature provides a balance and makes children aware of their natural abilities for empathy and for relating to each other and for relating to nature.
Our learning is based on our attention. Without attention, our brain cannot register what we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. Nature experiences promote a sense of focus and concentration. It's because the human brain has evolved in nature.
Well, Chirag was started with the intention of sensitizing children towards nature and environment. Sath mein, every Thursday we have a nature walk where all children go out and spend some time in nature, understand their flora and fauna around them. Spending more time in nature and connecting with nature, one big change that you can notice in students is they become much calmer. And also violence, I mean, there's almost no violence in school at all as compared to city schools where children are generally agitated and angry.
Learning in nature engages all our senses. Hence, it is absorbed deeply and is long-lasting. Surprisingly, many children who are hyperactive or have attention issues respond very well to the outdoors. This type of interaction has proved beneficial to humans for thousands of years. In ancient times, children in India were taught in gurukuls, which were often located in forests. Today, Finland, which has one of the world's best education systems, lays a lot of emphasis on learning in nature. Nature is a great teacher of humility. With humility comes respect. Respect for self, for others, and for the environment. On the other hand, overexposure to gadgets can cause a sensory overload. This impacts our attention span as well as our attitude.
We have actually had small children in the nursery school whom the parents were very proud. The child was so good with the computer, but the child was unable to mix around and play with other children. We had to spend almost a year coaxing the child. We have people getting addicted to TV, to their mobile phones, so many things around us, especially junk food. So sometimes it can lead to a lot of lopsided growth in the child. And many of these things don't lead to long-term well-being. Unless schools and the entire education system recognizes the importance of how unconsciously this addiction process is fostered, we will continue to create future generations who don't know to take care of their well-being.
A great way to overcome addictions is to replace your negative habit with the habit of spending time outdoors. Instead of depleting your willpower, which is necessary to fight urges, being in nature can help you work on self-awareness and self-control. This simple habit impacts our lives in surprisingly positive ways.
We call Prakriya a green wisdom school, not only because we want children to grow up amidst plants and trees and birds and butterflies, but also to give importance to the inner nature of the child.
So now we're going on a fun camp. So just remember that no Coke, no chips, no deodorants, no toilet paper, and no cell phones. I think the most beautiful part about fun camp is not the people, not the design, but just the process. Just because they're in a different setting, organically things just fall in place.
The toilets aren't the best and all, but I think on the whole it's a pretty good place. It's a pretty scenic place, it's very quiet, it's helped me reflect a lot on myself.
Such amazing banyan trees with all the roots hanging and stuff. In Delhi, you don't get to see so many trees and you don't get to breathe in the fresh air.
And possibly looking at these spaces and interacting with people from a different background will lead them to be able to explore themselves more deeply, challenge their own notions about themselves, about other people, and in that process start off this whole journey of becoming leaders with values.
Tree climbing therapy, which has gained popularity in Japan, shows that tree climbing improves mental clarity and feelings of vitality. The brain gets a boost from fresh air and interactions with the surroundings. It leads to increased confidence, improved ability to solve problems, and enhances the child's social skills.
My name is Augusta. That was my first time I was climbing the tree. And I was very scared. Then I had fun, so I did again.
Emotional intelligence is the power to understand emotions in others. It plays a greater role than one's IQ for achieving success and satisfaction. Spending more time in front of screens is reducing our ability to understand other people's emotions. Our world is becoming more connected but less caring.
The word sadhana is an old Sanskrit word. It used to refer to the path of an arrow going towards its target. So this idea of one path going towards the bullseye. So this project, Sadhana Forest, our bullseye is a life of consciousness and a life of compassion and a life of service. From the buildings we live in, the food we eat, the work we do, the people that we live with, the way that we interact with each other, all of this is part of our sadhana. We're standing now on some land that only 8 or 9 years ago was totally barren. There's nothing but red dirt here, all the way back to the boundaries of our property. And it's all been reforested by Sadhana Forest.
When scientists used brain imaging techniques to study the effect of nature on our brain, they found a specific part of the brain being activated. This region is directly linked to the dopamine reward system of the brain. Dopamine is a chemical that makes us feel good and leads to a rush of happiness. It results in a high likelihood of people forming emotional bonds. When one learns to care for others, it lays the foundation for better relationships and supports the development of empathy.
My name is Ambika. I'm 21 years old and I'm from Trivandrum. I live in a city where there's so much of bustle and a lot of negative vibes, but then when I came here, there's so much of happiness and serenity and peace, and that's exactly what I was looking for.
Interestingly, social media sites which keep us engaged and hooked also trigger a similar dopamine reaction through likes and notifications. Studies related to this show an increase in obsession with the self, also known as narcissism.
Somehow I actually started getting anxiety attacks. I couldn't figure out why this was happening. So I started looking into my daily life, analyzing every small part of it and thinking about what affected me. It was actually the social media use, especially in our generation, which we're using a lot. But then a friend of mine told me about this forest healing project. So I felt like this was giving me a different perspective to all the problems that I was facing. And it helped me find another sort of calmness. This was much deeper.
So the first stage of the walk is to be able to slow down, and silence enables you to do that significantly. The other thing that we try and encourage people again to do in the healing walks, once you've slowed down, you start to know yourself a little better, and you also start to know nature a little more because you're observing more deeply. So you find more clarity. There are questions in life that you've been holding on to for a very long time. Those questions usually start to unravel themselves with very subtle answers. That calmness is able to help you in addressing a lot of the challenges that otherwise seem very domineering and dominating in life. We tell people to leave their mobiles for a while and see what happens to them. And for most people, I think the connection just deepens. So something has to let go for the other things to come. And in nature, it's happening so beautifully, and the cycle keeps going on and on. And these are some of the lessons that we keep learning and sharing, and how do we apply them in our lives. And I think that's something that nature teaches us in a beautiful way. The art of giving, to be slightly selfless, So there is self, but there is just less of self.
Technology in itself is not the problem. It's how we let it control and affect us.
So, when we hear about the Northeast, at least for the last 6 decades, it's all about violence, political conflict, divisive states, So, can the youth be involved in building the region back through positive thinking? And it's one of the only regions with such rich natural resources, such rich forest areas. Only they can protect it, only they can build the region back. So the idea of Green Hub is that, to engage the youth through the visual medium, get them to understand what it really means to have a forest.
When we move in any environment, we are activating different networks in our brain. There is the logical, decision-making executive network. Then there is a network which keeps us balanced, and finally the default network. The default network is our free mind, which wanders here and there. It is also credited with producing creativity and important insights. A great nature experience allows the executive network of the brain to rest and recharge itself. It also engages the default network in a positive way.
Over the last 6 months, my personal experience of being in a project that is so closely associated with nature has given me a sense of direction of what I actually want to be or who I am. So that's the question we all have been asking since time immemorial, that who we are.
When we talk about life, we talk about the environment. Environment within the system where the life exists, which changes day-wise, which changes minute-wise, which changes season-wise. There's a change. Broadly, I will say there's a nature outside, the same nature you find inside, and you try to correct the calamities. When you effectively connect with the nature, you will be in a still nature. I don't think anybody sleeps sound. You are even in the sleep, you are always tired getting up in the morning. So all these disturbances reflect in your glandular functions. It's very delicate, and you create a lot of wrong emotions, which leads to wrong actions. That's what we need always, a stillness.
Stress has been declared as an epidemic on a global scale. It is linked to many of the leading causes of death. Constant stress leaves us more prone to heart disease, metabolic disease, dementia, and depression.
The main purpose of Journeys with Meaning is to bring awareness to people about the disconnects that we have with nature and the connections that we have. So that's why we come to places like this and do the work that we do. We believe that travel opens minds, and when our mind is open, we are more receptive to new ideas. And through experience, we've also seen that actually happen.
Your body is designed to respond to stress. When faced with any danger or stressful situation, the amygdala in your brain is activated. It triggers a fight or flight reaction, releasing specific hormones in the body. Connecting with nature allows the amygdala to cool off, lowering our anxiety and stress levels, enabling us to think more clearly and cheer up.
I've been ill, but the last 3 months my parents have been unwell. So I've been out of all groups. And it just actually felt like that when I came here. It was the most amazing feeling being in a place whereby I felt completely accepted. Even if I was feeling crappy, happy, whatever. And I think that's the magic of the forest. It does not ask of anything of me. It just is.
This is a Maplang Sacred Forest. So this is the oldest and the biggest sacred grove in Meghalaya. Around 500 species of trees, different varieties of orchids also. So as this forest is sacred, so we cannot take anything out, because we the Khasi used to believe that there is a deity inside the forest. If we take anything from here or do anything wrong, the deity used to give a curse or punish. So that's why this forest is untouched.
While India has many sacred forests, Japan has established over 50 healing forests. Quiet places to reflect, relax, and rejuvenate. The Japanese term for forest therapy is Shinrin-yoku. It translates as forest bathing. A walk in the woods brings about measurable changes in our body function. Blood pressure levels begin to lower down to normal levels. The stress-related hormone in our blood is significantly reduced, and the heart rate begins to slow down.
The biggest thing we are trying to achieve is simplifying life. We want to develop more integrity between the thought and action so that you are in the moment and more honest. So whatever happens, it flourishes or it dies out. That's how nature is. Instead of superficially carrying on the relationships, it's more about naturalness and cultivating that from deep inside.
Our immunity and energy levels are dependent not just on our physical health, but also our mental health, the food we eat, and the environment we live in. Research done in the United Kingdom found fewer cases of disease amongst people who lived near parks or open green spaces.
The negative behavioral traits of anxiety, competition, and the ego clashes in offices have been known to be reduced after a proper session on contemplation of nature or any meditative practice. People have more compassion towards the problems of their colleagues, and definitely the work environment also improves.
Aranyani is a philosophy derived from Rigveda, where we grow natural food forests. And a food forest is something where we integrate all elements of nature, the large trees, the small plants, grasses, subsoil roots, then birds, bees, earthworms. They all come together to create very pristine foods, which human body is accustomed to through millions of years. All in all, we have around 200 plus different species of flora across the multi-layer system. Some of the objectives are having regenerative, sustainable kind of farming to be brought back into practice, so that it creates healthy foods, something which can heal ailments, which can heal the body, and something which has gone out of our current foods. Because of genetically modified foods, then we have the pesticides and fertilizers, and the way it is grown, elements which food should have are not there to heal the body. Hence, there's so much need for medicines.
So Sehat One, we have coined this word by using the two things, Sehat and One. So Sehat is the health and One is the forest. We are trying to derive the health benefit out of the forest. Now the number one killer in India and in the world is the heart disease. Then comes the diabetes, cancer, all those things. Now those are actually not done by the external factors. They are not communicable diseases. They are because of our lifestyle. We started with the diabetes and then we also experimented with the hypertension and thyroidism, autoimmune disorders, etc. also. But if that doesn't work, then we realized that what's happening is not that it's doing something with one disease. Actually, the process was restoring the overall health. And then now we have extended it a little more. So we have realized that in the wilderness, actually you could even slow down your aging process. So we are working substantially on that also.
When we inhale toxic air, it first goes into our lungs. So you have cough, you have asthma, you have lung cancer occurring at much higher incidence. But then the toxins don't remain confined to the lungs. They get absorbed from the lungs and they go through the blood to every organ in the body. People staying in polluted cities have much higher incidence of high blood pressure. These people have several times increase in the incidence of heart attacks. And when it occurs in children, there are a whole lot of developmental abnormalities. Now, what future will children have if there is no pure air to breathe?
We're currently here at the Aravalli Biodiversity Park. It's 385 acres of land in the heart of Gurgaon, which is an initiative to reclaim what was a denuded mining site into what is today a vibrant and growing forest.
City forests act as carbon and noise sinks, reducing the impact of pollution on our system. In addition, brisk walks in nature encourages production of the chemicals that take care of our brain and blood vessels. Even a 2-hour walk through a forest can reduce chemicals linked to depression, cardiovascular disease, and inflammation.
It seems like a very simple thing to plant a tree, but I think everybody who's come here and planted a tree has gone back a different person. A mature tree releases about 115 kgs of oxygen into the air within a year, and 2 trees provide enough oxygen for a family of 4.
Certain evergreen trees secrete scents and oils to protect themselves from a host of microbes and pathogens. These compounds are called phytoncides, and they act as a defense system for the trees. As we walk in the forests, we breathe in these phytoncides. Phytoncides in the air can improve our immune function. There is an increased production of anti-cancer proteins in the blood, as well as higher levels of natural killer cells. The natural killer cells protect the body when it is exposed to viruses, common cold, influenza, and other infective agents.
Maybe take off your shoes if you're not too cold. Feel the ground with your feet. To connect with the earth, there's just a sense of touch that is missing, and it is usually something we don't do. So we'll try and do that. And while we are walking, we'll try and focus on the sense of smell a little more. Because one of the benefits that we really get from the forest is from the smells. Our life experiences are dominated by our senses. And if you take all the 5 senses, some of the senses have lost, their sort of connection with us. And in the healing walks, what we encourage people again to do is to be able to use the senses, to deepen the senses, and to connect with each sense.
Our visual sense is the strongest sense. We're influenced by the quality of light, the color of light, and also the source it comes from. Our hearing sense affects us at a subconscious level. Even though we may not be aware of it, our brain is processing the sounds in our environment. It affects our mood as well as energy levels.
What meditation truly is about being in a state of deep calm and awareness, and it doesn't have to be in closed eyes, it doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged. In an urban space, for example, there's so much of distraction that it's very difficult to slow down and find that state of calm and peace. It takes a long time to be in a meditative state. But when you're in nature, that process happens very fast. When people find that, it is, they are able to meditate without the very connotations of meditation, which is sometimes challenging for people.
Mental health remains one of the most problematic areas because one is least understood and yet the most stigmatized. People are still hesitant to ask for help. Having said that, it's not that everybody needs to go for help. It's a lot of things we can do to prevent at least some of the seriousness of suffering. I personally believe that it's a balance that we are not able to bring about in our lives. Things like looking after your wellness, which includes physical fitness, eating the right kind of diet, avoiding certain kind of unhealthy habits, getting onto your nature walks, just spending time outside, and definitely working on your own self, your interests, your hobbies. Because I think that kind of all-roundedness is what gives you a much better safety net to manage mental health issues.
Almost all antidepressant medications are thought to work by enhancing the availability of serotonin, the hormone used in nerve cell communication. There are many ways we can increase the production of serotonin in our brain naturally. Exercise is one of them. So is sunlight and spending time in nature. After a nature session, brain scans showed a sizable reduction of blood flow to the region of our brain linked to sadness, withdrawal, and general grumpiness. Walking in nature is a great way to bring awe, wonder, and fascination back in our lives.
When you reconnect with nature, I think the most important part for me is that you start reconnecting with yourself. And for me, that is a huge, huge way to improve your mental health. Because even if nobody else in the world tells you that you're a good person or a person of some worth, just reconnecting with yourself and helping yourself to see what you truly are can make you a much better and happier person.
We are called a LAP. Our mission, so to say, is to bring back the native forests of the Himalayas through a community-driven model. The right kind of forest is how nature would intend it. And how nature would intend it is in the Himalayas, which is one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world, there'll be many, many species coexisting together. So when you see a forest growing, when you see the saplings planted next to each other, you learn how the saplings are protecting each other, how they're helping each other grow, how their root systems are intertwined and feeding each other, protecting each other against pest attacks, disease. It's an ecosystem, they're looking after each other. It's like a community. And it's the same with people. No man's an island. We need our communities.
Trees that grow alone have a shorter lifespan than trees of the same species in a forest. Similarly, Communities and social relationships help people through difficult times, thus increasing longevity. A good way to improve our relationship skills and overcome loneliness is by creating a connection with trees and forests.
The Navadarshanam stands for New Visions. It is founded by a group of folks who were looking to explore an alternative way of living. 110 acres of what was completely barren land, completely degraded, logged, burnt, overgrazed sort of a landscape. So they decided to fence it and let the land heal. And to be truthful, I don't think anybody really expected the miracle that occurred. And in about 10 years, the land sort of transformed itself, a forest planted itself.
The medicine of nature appears to work in a dose curve. The longer time we spend in nature, the better it is. The recommended nature dosage is at least 5 hours a month. On the flip side, not making nature a part of our lives has detrimental effects on our health.
It fills me with a tremendous sense of humility. A diverse forest planted itself here. It was the wind, the birds, and the bees and the animals that brought the seeds. It teaches us how it's not just a tree in isolation. The interconnectedness is just unbelievable, and it's that interconnectedness and diversity that gives it the resilience. It's an incredible part of the whole healing process.
I was widowed at the age of 33 and with a young child of a 7-year-old. And after that, I was looking for a journey of healing. I started taking walks. I started sitting under trees to listen to the sounds of the trees when the wind blows. The first thing that struck me, that there is something in nature that heals. There is something that touches you very deeply, and a forest is a very beautiful place to go and cry, to go and share your pain to the trees, to the birds, and there is nothing to fear about it.
I work in palliative care, and usually we deal with the last days of our fellow beings on this earth. And the last suffering they have is almost incurable and inconsolable because they are getting detached from all these attachments they have made throughout their life. You can make somebody die well. If you put efforts, if you prepare, you can make somebody die well and with peace.
One cannot escape the ups and downs of life, but one can always find comfort and clarity in the company of woods. Observing the impermanence in nature is a healing experience. Realization of the circle of life and death in all things is an important part of letting go.
After coming to palliative care, this word of acceptance is very important in my life, because once you accept that reality, you are in a comfort zone. What we usually say to the dying patients, those are in their end of life, is that you are going to dissolve into the nature, going back to the nature and be part of this great oneness. The difference between healing and curing is curing is more physical and material. You want to get rid of your disease, you want to come to a normal life. But healing is something spiritual, mental and emotional.
So forests are underestimated. Ancient Indian literature is filled with descriptions of what can happen naturally and spontaneously in forest surroundings. The teacher tells the student to go into the forest and to observe the natural surroundings and to be aware of them. And when the student comes home, the teacher notices that there is a strange light in the student's eyes. And he says, well, what happened to you? And he says, well, I think I am enlightened.
The forests hold answers to questions we have yet to ask. Every stage of life will come with its own set of challenges. Creating a relationship with nature can offer us a healing sanctuary. The forests are waiting. Come home.